Is everyone in now? Anyone still not in from the gallery? Huh? No, well, we might get some heckling from the gallery, I expect, at this point. I'll just wait till the guys come across. This is the thing with using new venues. You have some snagging issues, but we will get there. Hi. I feel a bit emotional being here. It's a bit of a homecoming for me. I used to be a local councillor, and I used to sit over there. It's really nice to be back here with all of you. And first of all, thank you to Ben, our treasurer, for sponsoring the Kiddish style reception, I'm told to say. Thank you very much. It's an innovation. We've been piloting this new triennium, and I think people respond well to it. We have Kiddish as sponsored up until March, but if anyone would like to sponsor from that point, please don't hesitate. The May Plenary, I think we're going to have an Israeli theme, so if anyone would like to sponsor that one, please let us know, and you'd be very welcome to do so. I'm going to start with some... That's somewhat up to the person sponsoring it. But a conversation we can certainly have. I have a few muzzle toss to start with. To Anne Crook, whose son Ethan Crook competed in the recent European Maccabi Youth Games in the UK in table tennis. Team won gold for Team GB. So we'd like to hear. It was a wonderful event, bringing teams from all over the world, and I'd like to pay tribute to Michael Ziff, who is president of Maccabi GB and who organised it absolutely brilliantly. So thank you, Michael, well done. Also to Nina Morris-Evans from Finchley Reformed Synagogue for her recent victory at the Ironman triathlon in Rwanda. She's qualified for the 2025 World Championships. Really wonderful. Nina. Jack Feldman on his 62nd wedding anniversary on 16th of September, tomorrow. That's incredible. Mazel tov. And to Deputies Sue Haddon on the occasion of her son Jake Haddon's marriage to Lauren Morris. It's wonderful to celebrate together. I have unfortunately, some condolences to share as well to the family of Jane Harris, who was the former Deputy for South London United Synagogue, on her sad passing, and also to the family of Deputy David Safir from Mosaic Reform on his sad passing. I know we'll be having a tribute to him in a bit. Also, a refuah shalema to Lisa Halpern, mother of Deputy Noah Katz, who I know is recovering after a recent operation, refuah shalema. And I want to say welcome back to Shmuel Yosef Davidson, who tragically lost his wife a few months ago. It's really good to have you back, Shmuel. We're with you. It's good to have you back with us. So it's been a busy few months since you last saw us. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke out when the government took a decision which we found extremely problematic, particularly the timing of it, to suspend some arms licenses to Israel on the day that Israel was burying 4 young people who had been kidnapped by Hamas from the Nova Music Festival, held for 11 months in guards and dungeons, and then murdered just as Israeli army were coming close. I think it sent absolutely the wrong message to Israel to do that on that day, the wrong message to Hamas, and I think the wrong message to allies and adversaries. We're going to be working with the UK government and the Israeli government to see if we can get that decision reviewed as soon as possible. Some deputies have asked whether there are more things that Israel could be doing in that space, and I think it's just worth saying that there are some things we think that could come on that side too. Obviously, conduct on the battlefield, so Israel can continue to maintain its rightful ambition to be the most moral army in the world. Second of all, ensuring ICRC visits to Palestinian prisoners, as is Israel's responsibility. Thirdly, to make sure there are proper investigations of the really appalling allegations at State Eman prison. And fourthly, to really rein in, I think, some of the really irresponsible comments and incendiary comments and actions of Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir. Those are the things that Israel needs to do. We've been conveying that to Israel, and we hope that working with the Israeli government, the UK government, will get that decision reviewed as soon as possible. Of course, we know that that war comes in a context that was not of Israel's choosing. Israel did not want this war. It was started by Hamas with the most appalling massacre, the murder of Jews on a single day since the Holocaust, the kidnapping of hostages, 101 of whom still remain in Gaza. And this is the last board meeting deputies will appreciate before the 7th of October anniversary, an anniversary which we really don't want to mark, but we will be commemorating. I know we're doing some national events. I know others of you will be doing local events, which we hope to publicise through that. And deputies, I wonder if, in view of the timing of this meeting, whether those who are able would stand for a minute's silence to remember those lost on 7th October and subsequently. Thank you. And our call goes out from here to around the world, bring them home now. Not unrelated has been the challenge of the way that media has covered this conflict, and in the last few months we've been meeting with executives from the BBC and from Sky, making clear our concerns that they treat this coverage in an impartial way and that they treat their staff, particularly in the case of the BBC, properly. It's a conversation that's ongoing, it's dynamic, but we've made very clear our concerns. I know others are doing so too. There has been some really positive developments, though, too, deputies, and I think it's important we reflect on those. One of the things that I've said was a really, really lovely thing that happened since I was elected president was that 30 or 40 Muslim leaders wrote to me to say, let's work together, let's see what we can do. And in July, just before the last meeting, we hosted an event for 30 Muslim and 30 Jewish leaders in the board's offices, which we've dubbed the Optimistic Alliance. And we've started rolling that out around the country. Gillian Moon, where's Gillian? We held an absolutely brilliant event. Gillian organised an absolutely brilliant event in Southport, where you'll know there were riots where a mosque was attacked. It was an absolutely superb event. And it involved us meeting at the mosque. We secured a donation for the mosque from the Jewish community, and then we walked from the mosque to the synagogue, where we were able to share a meal together. Gillian, do you want to say just a word or two about that, and then I'll say where we're going with it next? On the left-hand side, there's someone with a little... There we go.
Oh, thank you. Gillian Moonman, Southport Hebrew Congregation. In the wake of the murder of the 3 little girls in Southport on July the 29th and the subsequent riots, the mosque was besieged, as you all saw on television, and there were terrible riots. And in the light of that, and in the wake of that horrible event, excuse me, Maurice Ostrov, the State Fair Share Foundation, and Phil came to Southport, and Phil was absolutely brilliant. He spoke at the Amlin Hall, at the Shul Hall, and he addressed the Imam. Rabbi Abel also spoke to the Imam in Arabic. There was good feeling. There was sharing of a meal with people of different faiths, with Christian clergy as well. And the board has really shown its best aspect at this particular event. And in fact today, and obviously I can't be there, the mosque has issued an open invitation to people of all faiths and no faiths to come and visit on an open day. So we're building on something which came out of absolute tragedy, and if some good can come out of this with interfaith relations, then of course all to the good. And once again, thank you to Phil and the staff at the board for making this happen and come together. Thank you.
And I was able to discuss that with the Deputy Prime Minister this week. Angela Rayner, has responsibility for community cohesion. It would be fair to say that she and officials were really, really very positive about that. Myself and Vice President Andrew Gilbert will be meeting Lord Khan tomorrow to take those conversations forward. One thing I would say, and I think it speaks to the kind of way that we want to work with deputies, we have now secured funding to do 10 of those events around the country. So we'll be looking to deputies and I know many of you are actively involved in interfaith relations where you are, to speak to Vice President Andrew Gilbert, Victoria Secretary, myself, if you're willing to do that. I know we've had some good conversations in Scotland about that. In Brighton this weekend, there were people who wanted to come forward. We want to do 10 of these, starting with around 10 events around November time for Interfaith Week. So if you're active in your communities with interfaith relations, let's try and build that network. Build out what we call the optimistic alliance. It's something that I think is really very important at this time. Is that going to work better? All right, try again. Southport's not the only place I've been of late. I've been on my travels. We had some fantastic visits in Bournemouth. Thank you to Deputy Marilyn Keane for that. To Scotland, both to Glasgow and Edinburgh. Huge thank you to Ephraim for organising that. And I've just come last night from Brighton, where I spent Shabbat as well. It's really important to me to be out all around the country and make sure the board is relevant in each and every part of this country. Some of you will know that we're planning to do the regional plenary, the regional weekend in Brighton from the 4th to 6th of July next year. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. I don't know, those of you who've not been to the centre there, it's incredible. They have a fully stocked gym, a fire pit, kosher restaurant. It is just amazing. There'll be a walking tour of Brighton we're talking about. There's going to be, for those of us who want to, a night out in Kemp Town. There's going to be plenty of really, really good stuff. So put that in your diary, 4th to 6th July. More details will follow. It will be a weekend not to be missed. It's also worth saying that the next board meeting will not be in London, it will be in Manchester, not for a whole weekend, although people are very welcome to come up to Manchester, the wonderful city of Manchester, for the weekend. But the next board meeting will be in Manchester, probably, I think, at Maccabi. We're just bolting that down, but really, really to show our absolute commitment to every part of this United Kingdom, that we are there for the next meeting. The gender equality plan we put out this week. Look, deputies, you elected the most brilliant honorary officer team. I must say I'm really enjoying working with them. Very talented and very committed. I should say Jeremy is unfortunately got COVID, so he's joining us remotely, but very much with us on screen, I know. A very talented team, diverse in its way. I'm the youngest ever president. We have two honorary officers under 40, represented from different denominations, from different regions. But there is no woman among us, I'm afraid. So we have really worked hard to try and be intentional about how we make sure women are represented at every level in the organisation. You'll have seen the plan. You'll have seen that we've already started implementing a number of elements of it. And I'm really delighted, and I want to particularly commend women deputies. We have women standing for more than 50%, I think, of seats in the divisional elections. The next bit is up to you guys. You'll know what it's your casting your vote, but we have got that plan. We'll be working through it with you, and it's very important. Finally, before I hand over to our independent chair, I wanted to just highlight deputy empowerment. That was something I stood on as part of my agenda, and I pledged on day one to put an advert into the field on day one for a campaigns officer, someone who would empower deputies, help us with some of the things that we're looking to run. I'm delighted to say Ariella, do you want to stand up, has joined us two weeks ago. Ariella Nobel-Gershon, she's going to be working with us to empower deputies right and around the country. The work has already started. This week we're going to be setting up, for those of you who want to opt in, an all deputies WhatsApp group, one way, so it won't be everyone speaking all the time, so that we can communicate key messages and that you can share those with your constituencies. In time, my hope is that we will use that to do digital polling, so that when there are issues that come up where we'd like to know the mood of deputies, that we'll be able to run polls through that as well. We're also going to be doing a survey of deputies' contacts and skills so that we can begin to formulate training, so that we can get deputies working out and around the country. And we've started planning for February next year a parliamentary advocacy day for deputies to all go to Parliament together and advocate together. This is the Board of Deputies we want. It's not just about the 5 of us, not just about our brilliant team of 15 staff, it's about the 300 of us. And if we can make that happen, that takes us to new heights. Finally, my last thing, and this is again a pledge that I made, is to bring an independent chair into these meetings. And I want to first of all thank Karen Newman, who's been a brilliant chair for the last 2 meetings in the pilot phase, and so delighted that we've got both Karen and Louise Ellman, who are going to be independent chairs of our meetings. I think changes the tone. Absolutely brilliant leaders of our community, and we're so proud to have you there. So without further ado, I hand over to the independent chair, Louise Ellman, to take forward the meeting.
Thank you, President. I'm delighted and honoured to be chairing this meeting. Karen has set very high standards, so I hope that I can maintain them. Well, let's start off with some housekeeping rules. First, could I remind you about general conduct? Please be polite and definitely no slander. The meeting won't be live streamed, but it will be recorded and it will be available online on Monday. We do have members of the press who've been invited to the meeting and may be online, so I'd like to draw your attention to that. And I'd like to remind you too that if you're speaking on Zoom, please remember to make sure that you are identified by your correct name and not iPad 3 or something similar. If you are an under 35 observer, please put U35 before your name, and that makes it easier to identify if there are any votes later. And I'd like to draw to your attention that for everybody standing in the divisional elections, you are not allowed to speak in this meeting. So that applies to everybody who's got their name put forward standing in those elections. Now, I was very sad indeed to hear the passing of David Safir. I know that he was known and loved by many people here, and he is a great loss. And I'd like to ask Adrian Cohen, as Senior Vice President, to say a few words, please. Adrian.
Thank you. Hello? Is it working? Yeah. Thank you to the Independent Chair for calling me to do this. It's with great sadness that I've been called upon to say a few words in tribute to the late David Safir Zichron Livrocha. David recently passed away suddenly, and it was a shock to his family and indeed to all of us. David has been a long-standing active member of the International Division. Speaking personally, since I became chair of the division, David has been an enormous source of inspiration and counsel. In the couple of months that I've then been in office, we must have had at least 5 very long conversations, including one just a few days before he passed away. I think our relationship would have blossomed into one of close collaboration. I've spoken with his widow Lydia and with a number of deputies, including Ivan, Kim and Michael. There's so much that can be said about David. Like a number of us, he was a graduate of the London School of Economics, and he obtained a scholarship to the University of Chicago, and more specifically to the Chicago School of Economics, where he was one of a small number of students to work with two Nobel Prize winners, Milton Friedman and Eugene Farmer. He spent a very successful professional career working in performing rights and travelling extensively. He was able to bring his invaluable experience to the Board of Deputies with a particular interest in South America. He was a long-standing member of Middlesex New Synagogue, now Mosaic Reform, and was for a period of time the chair of the synagogue. And before representing Mosaic Reform on the Board of Deputies, he was deputy for the Movement for Reform Judaism. He was a loving and devoted husband, father, father-in-law and grandfather. We express our deepest condolences to Lydia, Abigail and Nami and all the family. May they only know of happy times, and may the memory of David be for a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian, for those words. The minutes have been circulated. Would you approve those as a record? Not agreed? Thank you. We now come to the item concerning voting for the divisional elections. And I'd like to ask our Treasurer, Ben Crown, please, could you speak on this item?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much. I apologise to deputies that we weren't able to fully get through this at the last meeting. I promise this will be the last time we do an ad hoc amendment to the documents in order to permit electronic voting and so forth. Could I get the motion up on the screen, please? So this was sent round in the papers. This was sent round in the July papers. I'll just very quickly run through it. So we're resolving, first of all, that meetings and the definition of meetings in our documents include electronic meetings. Voting for the purpose of documents include electronic votings. Being present includes being present online. Electronic voting means electronic voting, and so forth. Deputies, remember we did one of these before the presidential elections. It couldn't be brought fully in July because we need to give a notice period before amending the governing documents. So I am now bringing it before deputies. It needs a 2/3 majority to be voted on. There was, I believe, no comment or question on it in July. So can I just ask if anyone online or in the room has a question, intends to vote against? Otherwise, we can take it as approved NEMCON. And I'm not seeing any hands online. Everyone in the room. Thank you.
No, if there are no objections here online,
Thank you very much, everyone. I will just very quickly remind everyone of the actual process for the elections. Deputies will have received an email from UK Engage on Wednesday, which has their unique link and code for the election. Another email should be going out at 2 p.m. with the same information. The voting site will open at 2 p.m. and will be open until 2 p.m. tomorrow. In the event that anyone has technical issues, the plenary meeting papers include an email contact and a phone number for UK Engage. One of the reasons why we're holding the window for 24 hours is that anyone who can't deal with it, has an issue today that can't be resolved, can deal with it tomorrow morning. Then once we've closed, the UK Engage will sort of tally and tot up. They'll do a verification, and then we will have the results for everyone Tuesday morning. And good luck to all the candidates.
Right, thank you, Ben. Are there any questions about the conduct of the election? Nobody standing can speak, remind me. Right. No, thank you. Right. Thank you very much, Ben, for that report. Right, we now come to the section where you can ask questions to the President and to the honorary officers. I'll call people. I think it's better perhaps if you speak from your seat. If you press the button in front of you, and if you call to speak when you've finished, please remember to switch it off. Otherwise, I'm told there's some interference with the voices. And I take a mixture of people here in the hall and people online. And I'd like to encourage anybody here. I think there are lots of new deputies here. I'd encourage you, please, if you want to speak, please do. So, questions to the honorary president. If you want a question to a particular officer, honorary officer, please say so. Right, there's one hand up. Yes. Could you give your name? Could you please give your name and your constituency when you speak? Thank you.
I'm Michael Sampson, Nottingham Hebrew Congregation. And my question is to the board generally. I'm not standing for anything, so it's okay. My question is to the board generally, but also to the International Tribunal, International Committee. Under the Terrorism Act, under Section 12 of the Terrorism Act 2000, aiding and abetting means furthering the activities of a prescribed organization. And one of the points is that I'm looking maybe to the board to have, with suitable evidence, jointly with other Jewish organizations, to encourage and support United Kingdom Lawyers for Israel, that's UKLFI, to pursue joint legal action in the UK courts against any organisation and individuals who are likely to aid and abet prescribed organisations such as Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, and I'm including Iran as well, but it's not prescribed at the moment. Just thinking about that, they must surely include what has happened recently through the Labour government for stopping certain arms sales to Israel and for recommending funding to Gaza.
Your time is up.
Oh, sorry.
A minute. But I think you have got your point over. Okay.
Oh, right.
Yes, it's a minute. Thank you. Anybody else in the hall want to speak? Yes? Oh, so I'm sorry,
Yeah,
can I call here and then we'll go to you there. And you have a minute to speak. Right.
Yes, good. My name is Zach Bates-Fisher. I'm a new deputy for Movement for Reform Judaism. One of the leading Jewish newspapers in the UK, the Jewish Chronicle, has been accused by the IDF, by Israeli media, and even by some hostage families of sharing a false report relating to military intelligence. The article published by the JC has proven to have no basis and seems to serve Netanyahu's agenda of not signing a hostage deal. Where do the Board of Deputies stand on this issue of fake news being spread in one of our communal papers and being used to influence the Israeli public against a hostage deal?
Right, thank you. I'll take gentleman at the back there, then I'm going to go to Zoom to Richard Cooper, and I'll then come back to the officers for their comments, and we'll then come back for more questions. So, yes, back there. Yes, yes, name and constituency, please.
Jonathan Brodie, Kingsbury Synagogue. First of all, can I plea that if there's a future meeting like this where there's a shortage of seats with microphones and there are a large number of deputies who can't speak because of being candidates, that the seats with microphones can be prioritised for the people who can speak, so I didn't have to come all the way down here. Phil, in one of the plenaries, you said that you were in discussion with someone or some people who wanted to make a significant donation to the board. I think it might have even been mentioned a 7-figure sum. Could you update us on that, please? Thank you.
Right, Richard Cooper.
Richard Cooper, Portsmouth and Southsea Hebrew Congregation. This actually follows on from Julian Pollard's written question to the President. What is the board doing to give our young people the resilience to stand up to peer-to-peer anti-Semitism in trade unions, the medical profession, and most seriously in academia and the universities, with Jews being sworn at, shunned, and shut out of buildings unless they condemn Israel? And what are we doing to give our young people the resilience to treat such behaviour with the contempt it deserves? Thank you.
Right, thank you. Right, I'm going to come to the honorary officers now to see who would like to answer any of those points, and then I can see there are one or two more hands up here who I will come back to. Right, who is going to start? The questions on the prescribed organisations, the Jewish Chronicle, anti-Semitism. Yes.
Thank you, Dame Louise. If I can just respond to Michael Sampson, if that's okay. So one of the things there's been a clear part of our plan has been the prescription of the IRGC for a long time, and indeed it was is the policy of the Labour Party and in their manifesto when they were elected to government, a long-standing promise. So we are continuing to hold the government to account on that issue and to ensure that that prescription takes place. We know that it's a work in progress of the Home Secretary at the present time. Regarding prosecution of organisations and individuals, obviously primarily we look to the DPP, the CPS and the police, and we have regular communication contact with the law enforcement officers and the relevant people in government with respect to that. Beyond that, in terms of private prosecution and campaigning, obviously we laud the work that UK LFI do in this particular area, and I think it's an initiative that they should be encouraged to pursue. But I think our focus remains with regard to more effective policing prosecutions by the state, which has the resource to do that, and also to extend the parameters of prescription. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian.
other officers like to respond to questions? Yes,
sure. So I'll take the questions from Zach and from Jonathan. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. So I'll take the questions from Zach and from Jonathan. So Zach, it's absolutely important that we tackle fake news, the media are responsible. I know that the Jewish Chronicle have conducted an investigation and issued an apology and clarification, and then removed all the stories by that, I don't know if the right word is journalist, and it's really important. It's really important that our communal institutions are held to the highest standards in terms of truthfulness and transparency, and I think that's really important in JC's case as well. To Jonathan, apologies for some of the snagging issues that I said. This is a new venue for us. We will be working and reviewing to make it ever better. And on your particular question, we've been very busy, myself and particularly the Chief Executive, have been very busy speaking to donors, including about those funding proposals that I spoke about. Some proposals have gone in. Obviously, these things are not immediate, but deputies will note that, as I said, we've secured a donation to fund 10 interfaith events around the country. That's the beginning of what I hope will be a wider series of funding that relates to things like that. So it's something we're very actively engaged in. I'm going to hand to, I think Andrew wants to answer one of those.
Yeah, Rick's comment, in terms of UJS and the incredible work they do in the youth movements to prepare people for what goes on campus and also what goes on in people's wider lives, they do an incredibly important role. In addition to that, we are very focused with UJS and with other communal bodies, both on campus administration and in terms of academics, and we all need to, post last year, October the 7th, we've seen a constant barrage of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism that we have never seen to a level before. This has now seeped into the workplace, and we are working from the police to the NHS to transport organisations and looking at organisations' frontline staff. Lots of training, organisations stepping up. We will play our role with that, but we are identifying in every meeting we have outside the community, what's it like for the employees in your organisation? And how do we work with you to actually sort that out? And it's unbelievable at the moment what we are seeing in the workplace, and it's got to be a priority for the board.
Thank you, Andrew. Now, I saw a couple of the hand up. There's Eddie at the back, then gentleman here, and then right there.
Thank you. Carol Abrahams, Catford and Bromley Synagogue. For many of my members, their children are the only Jewish children in their school, or there might be one or two. This becomes very difficult at Yom Tov. Last year, one woman told me that she had to send her child to school on Yom Kippur, which was a weekday last year, because the teacher had organised a special event of some kind that day. Now, I don't think this was anti-Semitism. The teachers do not know when the Jewish holidays are anymore. Now that they no longer have the little diaries that they used to have, it's all online, they do not know. Can we ask the Department of Education to make sure that all teachers in the country know of all the high holy days, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? I've also been suggested to me by a colleague on the council that the board would use a template letter for parents.
Hi, Shmuel Davidson, South Tottenham. I would like to know what is the board proposing to do with regards to the government's proposal of VAT on private schools, seeing that a high majority of our Jewish schools around the country are private schools, but we're not the same as in private schools within what the government looks at private schools. I'm aware of Chinuch UK, which represents the Haredi community, are working on the highest level of government on this matter. I would like to know what is the board actually doing, which is going to be a major problem for many, many of our Jewish schools around the country.
Thank you. Right. Yes, Clive.
Hi, Gordon, Bristol Hebrew Congregation. We in Bristol are blessed with a fine local MP, Carla Denyer, co-chair of the Green Party, and she's obviously so busy that she has been unable yet to respond to 3 emails and physical letters asking if she might meet us. No answer at all. I think it's because she's so preoccupied with the environment, and especially the environment in Gaza. I wonder whether the board, although they may well simply be an irrelevance, I wonder whether the board has spent any time on attending to the Green Party, and whether you've been more successful than we have in getting her to speak to anyone who is not in her echo chamber.
Sammy Burkoff from UJS.
Oh, we need to get a mic,
Yes.
Sammy.
Yeah.
Sammy will run down.
Sammy. Yeah.
She's going to run down. Sammy's going to run down,
Yeah.
so it'll be a minute. Take somebody else first.
Okay. Any more hand? Right, lady at the back there. Yeah.
Thank you. Debbie Addlestone. Debbie Addlestone from Leeds. A constituent has asked me to ask the board about the...
Debbie, sorry, it doesn't work without a mic. I'm very sorry. People on Zoom can't hear you.
Yes. Hello. Debbie Addlestone from Leeds. A constituent of mine has asked me to ask the board about the Holocaust Memorial and what the board's position is on that, and this person has very strong views about it and would like to discuss it. Thank you.
Sammy.
Hi, Sammy Burkoff, President of the Union of Jewish Students. I thought I just would add on the kind of universities and what we're doing with anti-Semitism awareness training. As of this week, we've got into all the medical schools, and the board of medical schools have asked us to train all their staff, as we noticed that was a high kind of issue at the moment, as well as all, we've started seeing universities take up for all student societies to have at least one member of their university trained, so of their society trained in our anti-Semitism awareness, so really expanding our training over the next year and working very closely with the board on how we can help academics as well. So hopefully that helps answer any questions, and I'm upstairs and around after if anyone has anything else to ask.
Right, thank you for that. Just like to remind people on Zoom, please participate and put your questions in, put your hands up. You don't have to put your questions in, and you will be called. But I'd like to go back to the honorary officers now. We had a few important issues raised. I'd like to hear your response. Right, Andrew.
Thanks very much. The first thing I wanted to do was talk about the Board at Work Guide, which is very shortly going to come out. That's got all the dates in it. It's got incredible material which will go to schools, but also all workplaces. And Victoria Lishek, has worked on it. Victoria, show yourself there. Thank you very much. And it's an incredible guide. We've just seen the work, and if we'd known you were going to ask a question, I'm sure we'd have had copies of it outside. But we'll send it round to all members of the board so you can see this. It's a ready-made answer on there. In terms of a pro forma for schools, we'll get that done as well. And I think Adrian's going to... I've just sent a message to Zach Polanski, the Deputy Leader of the Green Party, but Adrian's going to refer to that.
I was going to say that Vice President Andrew Gilbert sent a message already to Zach Polanski, so that's the speed with which we operate. Zach's the Deputy Leader of the party and has in the past stood for election in the London mayoral election, so we know him, and we've had a lot of dealings with him over the years and with the Green Party. And he's Jewish. It is a problem getting members of Parliament to respond. That's not the only example. And we'd be very happy to amplify your message and make the point that it's a critical part of a constituency MP's responsibilities to respond to their constituents, but obviously extends beyond that. It's a matter of engagement with the Jewish community as well, so we'd be very happy to do so.
Just to add, it's clear the Green Party needs to get its house in order. I was just in Brighton this weekend, which has had a Green MP for a while. They've got a new Green MP now. I'm afraid similar sorts of problems. It does seem that the Green Party has taken in a bit too willingly the riff-raff kicked out by the Labour Party, and I think we need to see them take proper action to ensure that racists, extremists have no place in their party or in our politics. Shmuel Yosef Davidson, good question. You'll have seen that we've raised concerns about the potential imposition of VAT and business rates in the Jewish Manifesto in consultation with yourself and Haredi colleagues. I met with Kinef UK a couple of weeks ago to discuss the challenge. We put the issue in our letter to the Secretary of State for Education when we congratulated her on her appointment, and we'll continue to raise the potential disproportionate harm to the Haredi community and indeed other communities of this measure. I think we can all understand where it comes from. Raising money to pay for teachers is something I think we would all understand, sympathise with and support. But there are particular communities who have independent schools that provide for something that's not provided in the state sector. Haredi schools and Jewish schools in general might be one example. SEN schools as well are another example. I think it's something the government needs to take in mind as it considers how best to implement this policy. Debbie, to the question about the Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre, it's a question that I know we get from time to time. The board's position is to support the creation of a Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre beside Parliament. It's not something that's universally agreed, but we think has the consensus support of the community, because if we think about the future, we know that we're possibly 10 to 15 years away from having no living survivors of the Holocaust. And the concern would be that over time, interest, support, resources will fade away. I often talk about the Boer War. The Boer War, 30,000 British soldiers died in that war, and there used to be public commemorations and support for that. Over time, obviously, as the Boer War fades into memory, even though it was very significantly the UK was involved, it just stops getting that attention. And I don't think any of us think that there'll be a cliff edge to government and public support for Holocaust memory, but it could happen. And the best hedge we've got is that there is cross-party support for a Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre right beside Parliament, and that is why we support it. And just finally to say, Sammy, who I know has just returned to her place over there, what a tribute you are to the community, and thank you to you and to all of UJS for the incredible work you're doing. You have our full support.
Vice President Jeremy Michelson, you're on Zoom, and would you like to comment, Jeremy?
Yes, I'd like to first of all apologise for being with you in person. It wasn't of my choosing, but it's really to go back to something. I think it was Rick Cooper who asked the question about protecting young people. A new front has opened up, which myself and Anna Silver, the board's education officer, are trying to deal with, and that is a lot of material on either called Israel-Palestine or sometimes just is being distributed to teachers to use in lessons. Reportedly neutral bodies like the National Education Union, the Educational Institute of School. We have seen some of this material. It is about as neutral as Yasser Arafat. Basically, it's one-sided, tendentious account of events, and it's dangerous. We have contacted schools, we've contacted unions with very, very little effect, but what we're now looking to do is to contact the organisations that run schools, to contact Sacres, warn them that this material is not neutral, and to propose that they look at neutral things like solutions, not sides, rather than accept this material.
Right. Thank you. Right, we'll go back to more questions here. Yes, take you. Yes.
Hi, is this thing on? Yes. Oh, fantastic. Hi, Toby Millis, under 35 observer for Bromley Reform Show. First time speaking to Plenary, absolutely honoured to be doing so. And there's no time, I'm running out. I find immense pride in Bromley Reform Show being one of the largest Jewish communities outside of the North West London bubble, especially in South East London. And I'm just wondering what the Board of Deputies are doing or planning on doing for in-person initiatives outside of North West London, especially in places like South East and South West London, from your neighbours who are so close yet so far.
Peter Prinsley MP on Zoom. Peter.
Hello, can you hear me? Great. So I just wanted to say two things following the questions that have been raised. The first is that I've joined the all-party parliamentary group on the Holocaust Memorial, and there's a group of determined MPs that will, in fact, I think, ensure get this thing done. It's one of the government's 40 bills, which was published in the King's Speech, and I think this will now go ahead. I don't think there's very much doubt about this, and it will happen right next to Parliament. So there's a good deal of support for this. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I understand that some deputies write to their members of Parliament and get no response. I was hearing what you were talking about, the Green MP who has not responded to questions from, I think, the Bristol congregation. If this is happening, I would be very happy to intervene and speak directly to those members of Parliament if people wanted to get in touch with me.
And I must congratulate you, Peter, on your election. I know I have them personally, but here I'm sure on behalf of the board, I think it was magnificent to see you elected. And well done. Right. Yes. To you, and then...
I'm Bruce Greenberg out of Northampton Hebrew Congregation. Members of our synagogue have asked me to push forward a couple of questions. The first, I suppose, should go to our treasurer, Ben. I know the Board of Deputies works closely with CST. They're wanting to know, does the Board of, for Security, does the Board of Deputies fund CST in any way, manner, shape, or form, or conversely, does CST help to fund the Board of Deputies? Or are we just two separate entities? And then one other question, I suppose this is for any of the honorary officers. It's been brought to our attention that there's a large pro-Palestinian march being planned for London on Saturday, the 12th of October, of all days, the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. Is there anything we could do maybe to have that date changed through Mayor Khan or somehow, some way?
Right, thank you. And behind you, yeah.
As I couldn't see everybody who doesn't stand up, I'll stand up, especially as I'm not very tall. I'm Doris Schmetterling, New West End Synagogue, Bayswater. Quickly to address the question of the banning of IRGC. I've been talking to my previous MPs from the previous government about it, because I've got one myself, but one was next door and they're out now. But they said, or one in particular said, it's to do with the fact it's a government organisation, even though it's recognised as being a rather nasty one. So, in fact, I think I asked the same question to 4 of the 5 leadership candidates for the Conservative Party that I've met so far, and as far as I can remember, of the 4, 3 of them said, yes, definitely we'll ban it. Of course, great in opposition. One of them said the more realistic thing, we're good to ban it, but it might cut relations with the few channels of communication we have with the Iranian government. I'm planning to have a meeting with my new Labour MP in the not too distant future, and I'll raise that question because I know the government has said it would ban it previously, but they're in government now, and that's a different situation. So I urge everybody, write to your MPs, especially if it's Labour, tell them to ban the ruddy thing.
Hi, Jack Saderman, under 35s observer for Stammer and Cannons Park United Synagogue. 4 weeks ago, the Board of Deputies President met with the Israeli ambassador, followed by posting a photo on social media of them both smiling with each other. Whilst Phil has kindly explained to me that he cannot disclose all information of every meeting that he has, I believe it would be in the interest of all deputies to learn further details about the content of this discussion. This meeting took place shortly after a letter signed by 30 UK rabbis, published by the Sunday Times, appeared to take issue with Phil's criticism of the new Labour government's approach to the conflict in Israel and Palestine. And there was also a letter from Israeli human rights and peace organisations who responded to Phil's letter in the Sunday Times by urging him to use his voice wisely and strategically. Hence, some deputies may be concerned about how Phil may have approached his meeting with the ambassador, as well as the tone in which he has displayed the meeting online. Further information on the meeting would be greatly appreciated.
Come back to the officers, honorary officers, please. Anybody like to comment, please? Quite a number of points there.
I'll just do the question about CST quite quickly. We don't fund CST. CST don't fund us. We are independent organisations. I believe CST pay a rep fee to send a delegate to the board, as many other organisations do. And the large... go ahead, Michael.
Just for the sake of just care, there is a possibility that we will be entitled to some government funding via CST for our buildings. That's in process, but it's not yet 100% confirmed. So it wouldn't be from CST's community funds, it will be government funds.
Yeah, as Michael said, one of the main sources of CST's funding is a direct grant from the government, which of course we advocate and continue to recommend is continued increase to meet the needs of the community.
So whilst we don't fund CST, nor do they fund us, what we do is work incredibly closely with them on a daily basis and having contact with the staff who work directly with the police, the staff who work on their corporate and public affairs, and we really are indivisible on most issues with them. On terms of, and this includes the conversations we have with the Met Police over the demonstrations. So once we saw on the demonstration that the PSC were handing out leaflets saying they intended to march on October the 12th, we immediately went into action. We had a meeting with the Commander for Public Order Policing. We've had meetings with a number of different Jewish commanders who thankfully work for the police, including a former Mazkir of a Zionist youth movement who is amongst those commanders. And that person and the head commander met with CST, the London Jewish Forum, myself, and on behalf of the board. First of all, there is nothing that's going to happen on Saturday, October the 12th. That's been made absolutely clear. They then said they wanted to move things to October the 5th. In terms of this being seen as totally inappropriate 2 days before October the 7th, a massive amount of effort is being ensured and put into the fact that, first of all, if anything does happen, it would not go anywhere near any synagogue. If it did happen, it would be probably the route that came from Russell Square and doesn't go near any synagogues. On the other hand, there's a lot of pressure, including from the police themselves, that will definitely not happen. So they're probably talking the next rally being on October the 19th. Again, a lot of pressure that has been put on police by all our organisations to say anything that goes near a synagogue is now, during the time of our Sabbath prayer or Sabbath activities, is clearly, in terms of being repeated, anti-Semitic in its content and intention, and all of us have been making it clear to the police. The fact that the PSC pretend not to know that and try and mask that in their own publicity is disgusting, and we've constantly raised that with police. So I assure you the police are being massively supportive of our community on this. There will definitely not be anything on October the 12th. Thank you.
Just to further respond to Doris Schmetterling regarding the position of the IRGC, part of there's definitely arguments which are used to justify not prescribing the IRGC, as you say. British still have an embassy in Iran, and there are relationships which particularly within the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, people think can be put to good use, but that obviously has to be weighed up against the detriment of the IRGC being able to function without being prescribed or sanctioned as such. And indeed, we've seen the threat of terrorism as a regular occurrence on the streets of the UK, and indeed there have been physical attacks as well on Iranian dissidents. And we know that Iran is a needless to say, a very bad faith actor in terms of what's happening in the Middle East, but also supplying ballistic missiles now to the Russian war effort in Ukraine. So it is something that we've certainly been campaigning for, and something which this government, when it was in opposition, was committed to. They are looking at changes to the legislation as well. There's a general review of the whole subject matter, and so we're waiting for an outcome of that review. But it's something that we have raised on a regular basis. When the President and myself recently met with the Foreign Secretary, that was one of the issues which we raised and have also done so in other ministerial meetings.
taking a few of those points, I know some people said they didn't quite hear Jeremy's answer, so just to say, the point he was raising was that there's concern about the way that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is being taught in schools, including some very irresponsible materials from some of the trade unions who really ought to know better. And so this is something we're taking in hand. We're working with educational bodies and with the government to try and flag some of these concerning events. I know Jeremy is working very, very hard on that particular issue. Jack, on the question of engagement with the Israeli ambassador and that matter, the Israeli government, we maintain a constructive and open relationship with the Israeli ambassador and the Israeli government. It's to pursue our agenda of peace, security, prosperity and equality. You'll understand that I can't go into the full detail of everything, but it is pursuing the issues that we're discussing here and in around the issues that are raised in the Jewish Manifesto and in the board plan. So I will say that. Just to add on the IRGC, and I know the Senior Vice President covered much of it, one of the things that I've been trying to get to the bottom of since coming to the role is that sometimes we hear that there's concerns about the United States' position in this. So I've raised this with State Department officials and said, what's the truth? Are you trying to stop us? They say no. The US position is that everyone should prescribe the IRGC. They said they congratulated Canada when it did so recently, and they'd like to see the UK do the same. So we won't hear any more of that, I hope. And then to Toby, congratulations on your election and welcome aboard, and on your first question. It is absolutely essential that we make this a Board of Deputies for every part of the country, including South London. That's really, really important. As you know, that my first weekend in the role was spent in Manchester, and I've set the team the objective of getting me to all of the 12 nations and regions of the UK within my first year. We've already got 9 of those 12 booked in or completed. As I've mentioned, the regional weekend in Brighton, the next meeting is going to be in Manchester, and you'll be very glad to know, Toby, that I'll be in Catford in November for the Jewish Living Experience exhibition. So we're not neglecting any part of the country, including and certainly not South East London.
Right, thank you for those responses. Linda Sharp online, would you like to ask your question, Linda?
Good afternoon. I'm Linda Sharp from Finchley United Synagogue. I suggested within our constituency we should meet Sarah Sackman, who has quite an important job in the government. And it was going to be handed over to the London Jewish Forum. I wonder if anything's happened or how I get in touch to deal with it.
Any further hands up here? Yes. Yes, well, there's only women. Yes, I take those two at the back there, and at the front here. Yes, okay.
Thank you. Paul Kane, I represent Woodside Park Synagogue. I think we're all concerned about, as you've already mentioned, about the BBC's coverage of the conflict. Just one suggestion is that it's much more valuable for those of us who are trying to combat this misreporting to have specific examples of BBC bias, not only from the internet, but also from recordings, ideally, of BBC reporters and presenters. And I suggest that this should be sent to one source at the Board of Deputies so we can, all of us who are interested in this topic, can handle it directly, maybe to Phil or to one that you suggest, that they can email these links and then we can collect them and deal with them accordingly.
Robert Shaw, new Deputy for Hampstead Garden Suburb Synagogue. This is a related question and didn't confer beforehand. Will the Board of Deputies endorse the Assassin report into biased journalism at the BBC, given the likelihood that such journalistic bias has contributed to anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist rhetoric, sentiment and behaviour, both here and abroad? What can the Board do to help the BBC and BBC Arabic address the concerns raised and forensically detailed in the Assassin report?
I think online, would you like to speak?
Hi, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Amanda Bowman, Hampstead Synagogue. I just want to respond to Linda to say that I have spoken to Sarah Sackman and I'm in touch with her office to get a date in.
Right, thank you. Are further hands up? Yes, try and look at some of that's. Yes, yes.
Joel Kaufman, Deputy for B'nai Akiva UK. I'm also a student on a campus in the UK, and I personally have had an issue of I have been recommended by CST to specifically not go to campus security because they cannot deal with anti-Semitism. What can we do to ensure that proper anti-Semitism training is given not only to university staff, but also to general campus security and security in other areas in which there are lots of Jewish peoples?
Is there somebody here with a hand up? Yes.
Daniel Sachs, under 35 observer for Forest United Synagogue. My local Jewish secondary school has recently announced the gradual closure of its sixth form due to a lack of students and staff. This has led to a significant influx of Jewish students into other local schools. What is the board's plan for supporting the needs of non-Jewish schools with growing Jewish populations with specific regard to pastoral care and Jewish events?
Right, there was another, yes, back there.
Josh Davis from Richmond Synagogue. I want to ask about the arms export licences to Israel, particularly the legal advice to government. They seem to have hung their hat on this, saying essentially it's a legal decision and their hands are tied. There's a very brief summary they've published regarding risks to humanitarian law. I think that refers to the treatment of prisoners and the flow of aid into Gaza. But my question is, could you tell us, from your briefings with government, what do you understand to be in that legal advice, and do we believe it to be sound or unsound?
Right, I'm going back to the honorary officers now. Who would like to start by responding to some of those points? Right. Andrew.
Yeah, I'm going to do the BBC. I think when it comes to as well, call Sammy in terms of Joel's question about Leeds, and also to note Joel, of course, as the grandson of Flo Kaufman, a greatly missed former treasurer and vice president of the board, and very special acting there. In terms of the BBC, we've had meetings with BBC. We've spoken to a large number of suppliers and people who work for the BBC, and there are different ways in which we are going to look to combat the BBC. In terms of the Assison report, which is a great report, our job, I don't think, is to either endorse it or to welcome it, but actually to listen to Trevor and listen and talk with him about how we can see various aspects taken on. There's lots of other reports coming out. We're working with various people in the industry. I think there are two core problems we've got with the BBC. One of those is all the content-related stuff, and the other was how they are treating employees within the BBC and anti-Semitism expressed in those areas. And the Film TV charity, you can see their report online, has taken up, and they've spent a lot of money in terms of anti-Semitism and other training. It's really important we look at that aspect as well. In terms of the content side and monitoring, we really need to up our game there, really record things as they're happening, coordinate more within our deputies, and see how we can use our deputies to reach out and really take on a note. So yes is the answer there. We'll take that on in a more coordinated way, particularly on the more egregious and more obvious aspects. We also met with Sky. We've got a focus there as well. So it's not just this is across the media. We're talking with. We went to the Royal Academy. We had conversations. There's conversations in a wide area that we're looking across the whole of culture and media. So BBC is absolutely in the line. We're watching it and working with others across the field as well. There are lots of people, sometimes with conflicting strategies. There are people in the Jewish community who vary greatly on how we think we should take it on. So we've got to sort of dance in between all of those, work with the people, and see what results we can get.
Thank you for responding to, I think it was Josh. Yeah. Thank you for your question with regard to arms licences. So we have met with, as mentioned, with the Foreign Secretary. We also had a meeting with the Attorney General, and there's also been other discussions involving other ministers. The first point to make, perhaps an obvious one, is that we've not seen the legal advice, and we won't see the legal advice, and so therefore inevitably in any discussion you have, one's at a disadvantage because one can't, as a legal matter, sort of assess that advice. So we are dealing with statements which are made in the public domain regarding that. What I can say is that, and as the Foreign Secretary said when he addressed the House, it was with great regret that the suspension was announced. It's a suspension only over certain of the licences with regard to military exports, which overall is a relatively small number, and it's quite remarkable how little, in fact, the Israeli Defence Forces rely on British arms exports in comparison to how much the British rely on Israel. Israel, I believe, is the third largest exporter of military technology to the UK. There are two issues which have been flagged in regard to the suspension of licences, and the suspension was done because of the risk of violation of international humanitarian law. One of the things the government stressed was that that's a very low threshold, and they also emphasised that Israel is the only recipient of the suspensions. And the two issues which have been highlighted have been regard to the treatment of detainees and also the availability of aid into Israel. It's also been suggested that that the previous government was on the verge of also conducting such a suspension, but for the amount of aid that was then released into Israel. There's not an obvious logical connection between, regardless of one's views on all these issues, there's not an obvious logical connection between the amount of aid that has or hasn't been allowed into Israel and the treatment of detainees and the clear risk of, or a risk of the use of weapons in violation of international humanitarian law. And there are also questions to be asked about why it's possible to continue, for example, to supply components as part of the F-35 programme, but not provide components with regard to other aircraft. And so you speak to different people, you get different views on the suspension as to whether really it's something where the government did have its hands tied, or whether it's something which is more of a political nature. And as I said, absent being able to see the legal advice, one can't reach a view on that with absolute determination. I think where we sit in all of this is that we do believe that politics does play a large part in what has taken place, and in common with communal partners, we have been making the case, particularly with regard to the timing of the announcement, which, as the President said in his opening remarks, was particularly egregious, and I think perhaps some of that can be understood as a consequence of this being a relatively new government that may not have as much control over the grid, as they call it, as it should have, and should be much more proactive in seeing in being able to deal with the timing of the announcement. This is all work in progress. It's one of a number of interactions with regard to the UK government and its role with respect to the conflict in the Middle East, and as I mentioned earlier, with Iran and also Iran's role in the Ukraine-Russia war. And so, we have to keep the dialogue, we have to work for engagement, and we have to, how we approach the government has to take that into account. It's very early days with regard to this government. And I must say, despite the criticisms which all of us have made, there is nevertheless a high degree of access and engagement, which is something that we want to maintain in order to be able to put forward the views that the Board of Deputies holds along with our communal partners.
Just to mop up a couple of those things, there was a question, I think it was from Joel about, well, I'm trying to remember who it was, about media. So we have an email address, reportingbias@bod.org.uk. Ariella is taking control of that. We're still trying to put the infrastructure in place, but if you see things that you want us to be taking in, please do send it to that address, reportingbias@bod.org.uk, and we'll begin to compile those things in amongst others. I know that I think Sammy was going to answer one of the questions on what's happening in terms of proper training. I don't know if Sammy is behind me. She's behind me.
Yeah, so on the question about security and being trained, the security student coordinators at CSC have spent the past summer and 3 months meeting with different security, campus security, and providing their training, which is kind of works alongside ours. So whilst we've been meeting with vice chancellors and student unions, they've been meeting with campus security, training them on anti-Semitism and working with them to make sure there's a really close relationship between CST and campus security. Also on that note, they'll be really annoyed at me if I don't say this, that the student security coordinators are hosting a student briefing, security briefing for all university students today at 5 p.m. So any concerns, definitely come and join that. And yeah, hope that answers.
Thank you again, Sammy. And just to say, voting is now open in the divisional elections. Don't all run to your phones at once. There's 24 hours to vote, but good luck to all those who are standing. Have we covered all the questions? I think so.
Just one other quick thing on the IRGC I keep forgetting to mention. We should congratulate the British government for prescribing 3 senior members of the IRGC, which they did recently, which was round about at the time of the suspension of the licence, so it kind of got a bit lost in all of that. So, and additional sanctions on shipping this week. Thank you.
Well, thank you for those responses. I'm going to pause now. We will have a comfort break until 2:35, but I just remind everyone that is a further opportunity for questions and discussions. We're going to be discussing the board plan next, so there is a further chance for people to ask questions. So thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. We're resuming the meeting now. We're going to start now. I hope everyone's back in the seats, but we're about to start. Right, we now turn to the item, very important item. We're now coming to a very important item where there's a lot of opportunity for discussion. It's just very important, and that's the open forum. And today we're going to discuss the board plan. Now that has been circulated to you. It's a very important document because it's about the policies that will guide the work of the board over the next 3 years, so it is extremely important. Now, as I said at the beginning of this meeting, people standing for election are not allowed to speak. However, because this is such an important item, we are going to hold an additional meeting on Zoom on September the 17th at 8 o'clock for everybody, but in particular to allow those deputies who've not been able to speak in the discussion today to be able to give their thoughts on this plan if they want to do so. So let's start now with the open forum discussion on the board plan, which you all have, and I'd like to start off by asking Phil if he'd like to introduce it, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Now, it is in the Constitution that we're supposed to produce a board plan within the first 3 months. It's never happened before in my memory. But for us, it's really, really important to do this and do it well, because the board plan, rather than being something that kind of, we need to get round to it at some point, we just fling something out, actually will guide the work of this organisation over the next 3 years. The divisions will each have a role in delivering it, and as the divisions are elected, the chairs will explain the different bits that the divisions will take, and I think it'll probably be obvious, but we'll go through that. And this is part of our model of empowering every single one of our deputies to deliver the work. So really, really important to get your views and your feedback. Just a top line, and we've tried to really set it out in a clear way, what our objectives are over the next 3 years. Fight anti-Semitism, stand up for peace and security in Israel and the Middle East, defend our religious freedoms, make our community more united, more inclusive and more outward-looking, and celebrate our faith heritage and culture as British Jews. And we set out a plan for how we do each and every one of those things. Those are the ones that we're going to most speak about. They're going to go on the wall in the Board of Deputies offices. We're going to shape our communications around them, and the divisions, as I said, are going to deliver them. But we've also got 3 very important internal objectives that will hopefully strengthen our institution. Empowering our 300 deputies and 200 constituencies to advocate for our community. And as I said, we've already started work on that with Ariella's appointment and the work that we're doing in that regard. It's really important. It's no longer about me or about the honorary officers or even about our brilliant staff team. It's about the 300 of us. And I think that's where we make the change we need. We also, of course, need to enhance the board's finances and fundraising. That's really important to do the work we need to be able to support it financially. And of course, to strengthen our advocacy, communications and marketing. I know that some of you already expressed an interest in supporting us with that. So with that, you've got the plan, it's been sent to all of you. We'd love your feedback and comments, and I open the floor to you.
Right, thank you, Phil. Right, who could you indicate if anybody would like to speak on this?
On Zoom, William Biginski.
And, Zoom, William Biginski.
William Biginski, I'm Deputy for the Association of Jewish Refugees. I'm looking at the section headed Defend Our Religious Freedoms, and the second point on there about working closely with medical and legal colleagues about a range of medical and other issues. And I just wanted to say I think it's a great aim, but I think it's much wider than it fits there in Defend Our Religious Freedoms. One of the reasons is the practical reasons that I suppose prompted this in the first place was about monitoring. And I noticed from my own experience in the NHS, where there are particular diseases that are more prevalent in the Jewish population, but there is no, in the ethnic monitoring form, there is not even a space to write that you are Jewish, never mind as a separate thing. I think that there needs to be a campaign for Judaism to be on the census form, and that it's used as a routine on ethnic monitoring forms, because I think otherwise we make ourselves invisible.
Right. Thank you. Does anyone else? Yes. Is there anybody else that can? You and then after you played it with that.
Yes. Zach, Reformed Judaism. I'm sure you will appreciate the importance of building interfaith relationships with our Abrahamic cousins, Muslims and Christians. Without denigrating that work, what does the board plan to do to build relationships with non-Abrahamic faith communities in the UK, in particular Sikh and Hindu communities?
Yes, Zach, speak.
Hello. Okay. Tessa Milligan, under 35 observer for Yahad. Lots of great stuff in this plan. The under 35 observer scheme is mentioned in terms of carrying out a review. I'd love to see something a bit more concrete in terms of what's the end aim, without necessarily preempting the outcome of a review or what the review will look at or conclude. Everyone else has potentially rushed to go and vote on their phone. I can't vote on motions at plenaries, and also because of this constitutional position that observers are in, I can't even stand for the under 35 assembly. So I'd really love to see something a bit more concrete in this plan about what will happen to under 35 observers, because I think we really do need to have equal voting rights to deputies. There are lots of under 35 observers who have a lot to contribute to the work of the board, and so I'd love to see that going forward by the end of this triennium, please.
Anybody else like to comment? Speak on this? Amanda Bowman on Zoom. Amanda.
Thanks. Phil, deputy empowerment was a key part of your manifesto before the election, and you've already touched on that today. During the hustings earlier this year, when current HOs were engaging with deputies and others, one message came out loud and clear, and that was a strong enthusiasm for social justice. The Social Justice Committee and its earlier iterations have campaigned and taken action on a wide range of issues, from climate change, poverty, refugees and asylum seekers, domestic violence, and lots of other things. It's been a real excellent example of deputy-led engagements on issues important to the entire community. The board plan makes a passing reference to the issues, but not to the deputy-led committee that's been a hallmark of deputies' work. I'd really like to see in the next draft that the Social Justice Committee is put in there loud and clear.
Thank you. Would there anyone here like to speak? Yes, Mark.
Clive Lawton, if I could say that last time I was a deputy I was under 35, but that was before the President was born. I'm now again a new deputy. I'm just struck by the issues of diversity and inclusion in the report. First of all, can I say that generally the plan seems very rich, and it may be that there's so little comment to be had because you do seem to have covered many of the bases that people might be concerned about. But in the talk about inclusivity and perhaps unitedness as well, there's a slight slip perhaps on the concept of diversity and the respecting and value of differences of opinion. So if we just take the first line on united, pursue unity where possible whilst celebrating diversity and debate. I mean, I'm happy about the second clause, but this we value, we want to include people who do not stand in the normative position of the community. Perhaps looking back at the material about Israel, for example, we know the diversity of opinion here amongst Jews on those matters. How do we include and make people feel welcome when they have quite divergent positions from the norm? And how do we become a debating chamber where somebody can stand up and say some of the very unpopular things? I fully accept your comments about not wanting anybody who wants to see the end of Israel or those kinds of things, but people who have very challenging and divergent views. I'm not sure there's quite enough in that.
Anybody? Rick Cooper on Zoom. Richard Cooper on Zoom.
Richard Cooper, Portsmouth and South Sea Hebrew Congregation. Apologies for speaking twice. Those of you who know me will not be surprised that I have laser focused in on page 6, University and Inclusivity, bottom paragraph headed Outward Looking, where it says you will build an optimistic alliance with British Muslims and also interfaith work within the Christian denominations, strengthen ties to Hindu, Sikh, etc. And I just like the reassurance of the executive that this will not be, as it has seemed to be in the past, 50% devoted to trying to make the Muslim Committee of Britain like us, and everything else to do with wonderful Muslim communities such as Ahmadiyya and Ismaili, and of course, as Zach rightly pointed out, are very important relationships with Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, etc. I hope that the executive will do their level best to give equal weight to our relationships with all the faith communities and not just have it as us trying to make sholem with Muslims to the exclusion of our natural friends in other faith communities. Thank you.
Anybody else in the room to speak? No? So no one on Zoom? No. Yes, can we move on? The officers want to comment at this point. Yes, Andrew.
Yes. On the census and we've campaigned now for a number of years that we would find under religion and under ethnicity there would both be a Jewish box, and there's only one on religion. This time in Scotland it was changed, and we're looking to follow up the results of the Scottish census, and Scojec are working with us on there. However, we've got a meeting, I think, with this week with the Office of National Statistics. At the last meeting, they said a census in 2031 was unlikely. They were trying instead to look at other ways of collecting information. That opens up the whole area of the classifications, which in the past only followed the census. So if we would be, in terms of information that was collected from in housing, in hospitals, in policing and everywhere else, in between censuses, it was based on the census categories. And therefore, if you were not on the category for ethnicity, then they would not be taking that information. But this now opens up the question, if there's not going to be a census in 2031, how do we get this changed? And how do we deal? We're not the only group that is excluded on the ethnicity. The Latin community, the Southeast Asian community in terms of Vietnamese, Chinese are excluded in there. There is also the Sikh community. So first of all, we're going to continue campaigning with the Office of National Statistics in that area. In terms of reaching out to Hindu and Sikh community, in the meetings we've had with the Faith Minister, Wajid Khan, he has brought in lots of people in the Sikh community in particular, but also from the Hindu community. The Hindu community is quite hard sometimes to work with nationally, there's so many different groups, but locally we will encourage people to work with local Hindu communities. With the Sikh community, there is quite a large group now of new Jewish MPs. There's a very strong group of Sikh MPs, and we will be looking to meet with and reached out to Preet and various other people in the Sikh MP group, and we're looking to have a meeting with them and talk strategically. We already work with Sikhs in policing, we work with Sikhs in health matters, and we would look to build very much with other communities as well.
Thank you. And there are two speakers on Zoom, Jeremy Michelson, Vice President Jeremy Michelson, and then David Grossman. So, Jeremy.
Oh, sorry. Louise, I hope my sound is rather better than it was earlier on. Really, in answer to Amanda Bowman's point, in my first triennium, 2015 to 18, Amanda was vice chair of the CED, and she was chairman of the Board of Deputies Social Action Committee, which is now just called the Social Justice Committee. And I understand fully her commitment that social justice should be an important part of what we do, that the Social Justice Committee should be an important part for that. And I can promise her that in the CED, where the Social Justice Committee is once again taking its place, it will have an important role to play. The fact that it may not be mentioned specifically, I can assure you that I intend that it will have an important part to play. Thank you.
Right, Daniel Grossman. David Grossman, sorry.
Okay. Good afternoon. Just a short question regarding the proposed merger with the Jewish Leadership Council. To what extent are they willing partners, and what is their current view of the suggestion, please?
Thank you. Right, there are no other hands up here. Does any Phil, do you want to comment, or Ben? Did you want? Right, Ben, would you like to speak first? And then we'll go to Phil.
Thanks very much. Yes, just on the under 35 scheme in response to the questions we made. I think the commitment in the plan is to review, to look at what's been done, to look at what recommendations for the future. Obviously, we can't at this point prejudge that. I think we all hear the strength in the room, the idea of bringing under 35s in as on an equal footing with voting rights. That's obviously something which we'll look at and bring to Deputies' proposal. If I just background for a minute or two on this, half a minute or two on this, is that this is now the 5th triennium. We've run the under 35 observer scheme set up 12 or 13 years ago. I think the consensus has been it's been a huge success in terms of bringing in younger representatives, bringing a pipeline, under 35 deputies, then becoming deputies, then becoming officers and take up other positions across the board. It's something we very much want to continue. I do want to flag that we are light on under 35 observers right now. There are 177 members who have sent back deputies this triennium so far. We only have 25 under 35 observers. I encourage communities to take that forwards, to look to appoint, to look to bring forward those representatives. They don't need all the complexities of elections that full deputies do at this point. And you know, to the extent this is something which we value, which we think contributes to the board's, to the board's discussion, I really encourage members to look to bring through their own.
There was another hand up which I didn't see, so I might call you now, and then I'll go back to Phil.
Hello, yes. Jean-Vier Palmer, Deputy for Bromley Reform Synagogue. I am many plaudits for the plan as it stands, but I would like to see a few more timelines, milestones, objectives, sort of KPIs, and sort of trying to see what we can actually put in place and then we can measure against over the course of the triennium. Thank you.
I missed another one, so this is the last one here. This, you want to speak?
Hi, Sam Cohen, new deputy for RSY NETSA. Just looking at one of the lines in the bit on unity, it says one of the principal boundaries of the board is towards those who oppose the existence of the State of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. And I think everyone in this room would agree with that. I've just spent my summer on camp with RSY, and I don't think it's fair to say there's a vast amount of people in my generation who oppose the existence of the State of Israel, but there are certainly a contingent who are extremely sceptical towards the State of Israel. And I had very difficult conversations with those who I actually would say are anti its existence. So does the board have any plans to commit resources towards that group of Jews, especially in my generation, if it's not going to include them in its vision for unity on the board?
Right, thank you. Right, Phil, would you like to comment on any of this?
Well, I've been delighted by the conversation so far, and I think really, really good inputs. To Jean-Vier's very important point, actually, what we will do once we've established the plan is produce an operational plan that goes behind it, which divides it among, creates divisional and staffing responsibilities as well as timelines and funding plans for it. So absolutely, you're 100% right. We've got to put it into practice. This is a kind of our objectives, and then we will work out the operational plan behind it. But you're absolutely right. We want to see it all delivered, and we're aiming to try and deliver all of this in 3 years. I think, particularly to Clive's point, I think obviously it's a really good point. I know it resonated with the room. I invite people, there's also, as well as the meeting on Tuesday, an opportunity to put in things in writing. If you think that there are useful clauses or things that we could add, by all means do put it in, because we do want to consider how we just fine-tune it and get it to absolutely the right place. Just to add on the under 35 observer scheme, obviously we will have the review and we'll see the results, but the objective in here is with a view to further empowering our young deputies. That is absolutely where we're going with it. We'll look at the best mechanisms to do so, but that's really there. On the point that you made, sorry, I missed your name, Sam. This point just below that is about a series of events for members of the community with other perspectives on a range of issues. And what we do want to do is create a series of conversations, both in here, but also wider in the community, where we can take in issues, particularly around Israel, where there's a diversity of opinion, and so we can explore those together. And it'd be great to get your input and RSY's about how we best do that. I know that's something I've discussed with a number of different groups. On the JLC, so far their public response has been that they're not interested in it at this time, but we'll continue to push it, because I think a merger is in the interest of the community. I've had a lot of support from it from other JLC member organisations. If they don't want to come together, that's up to them at the end of the day, but we will work together for the good of the community. But we think the time has come to bring the two organisations together. I do want to pick up one point, and I suspect it wasn't the intended phrasing, but there was some implication that Muslim communities were not our natural friends. And I just do want to push back against that. Like I said, 30 or 40 people who I do consider personal friends wrote to me to say, we do want to do work together. We do want to build this optimistic alliance. I wouldn't dismiss the idea that we do have good friends in the Muslim community. It's clearly a sensitive relationship. It does require our attention. I think we're in a unique position to do some good work on it. But obviously that won't be to the exclusion of working with different faith communities across the country. And I think that the plan sets that out. I think the other point... Thank you. I don't know if there are other questions, but obviously there are other opportunities put in writing. There are further questions? Further questions? Further suggestions? So, one thing okay, we'll take some more questions.
All right, I'll take one more. All right, yes.
Hi, Harry Lamper, under 35 observer for St Albans Mazorti. I just wanted to bring up a note in the board plan compared to something that was said in the last plenary minutes about the promotion of the expansion of Abraham Accords and peace with Palestinians based on the elusive two-state solution. In the last minutes, there was a note about not wanting the establishment of a Palestinian state to appear as a reward for terrorism. How exactly does the board intend to go into discussions and good faith discussions without people basically using what happened last year as an excuse to kick the can down the road on Palestinian statehood? Because and if so, how long exactly is that expected to be able to be used for by people?
Does anybody else want to speak on this? No, okay. We'll close this section. We'll now move on to crowdfunding and legacy. Oh, sorry. Right, okay.
Doris Rentalini, West End Synagogue, Bayswater. Just wanted to make a comment on the last comment. A two-state solution has been on offer since 1948. So kicking the can down the road is not necessarily the fault of the Israeli government.
Okay, thank you. Right, we'll now move to crowdfunding and legacy. So Ben Crown, Treasurer. Oh, sorry, Phil.
Just as a closing thought, for now on the plan, obviously there are the other opportunities to discuss. I know many who are standing for election may wish to have their say. I think the last point's there about the two-state solution, which remains board policy. Look, it is challenging. It's a challenging circumstance. We must recognise that we don't want that to come at the wrong moment or as a reward or anything like that for the events. But we continue to push in that direction. Ultimately, it's for the Israelis and Palestinians to negotiate that peace. We want to blow in positive vibes. We work with Israelis, Arab partners, the wider international community to make our voice heard on it. I think it is heard. But, we don't want to overstate, but we shouldn't understate. But I do hear the points that you and Dory have made on it. The thing I would just say in conclusion is this. We've had a really hard 11 months, and that's the backdrop of this is the horrific events of 7th of October and indeed the massive rise in anti-Semitism. And we have in this plan ideas for how we address some of those challenges, including, of course, getting the hostages released and doing everything we can to campaign for that. But I think I want to just draw attention to the last section, which I know no one's raised any concerns or comments about, but I think is supported. We also need to celebrate our faith heritage and culture as British Jews. As well as the challenges, we have so much to celebrate in our community. It is part of the response, it's part of educating others about who we are. It's about making sure we have pride in ourselves as well. So as much as there are those challenges, I do want us to focus on the positives as well, because there is so much positive about being a UK Jew. And in the end, what we are aspiring for and why we've entitled the plan is we want this to lead to a brighter future for the UK Jewish community. That's the plan.
Thank you very much. Right, Ben, crowdfunding and legacy.
Yes, thank you very much. Deputies have heard the discussion about the board plan. They've seen the board plan, the breadth of ambition of what we're looking to achieve over the next 3 years. In order to do that, as your treasurer, we need to raise the funds to pay for it. Funds for specific activities, funds to support our professional team, funds to partner, collaborate and co-deliver with partners on so much of this work. We've known for a long time that the board needs to do more in this area. It's one of the key priorities, as you'll have seen in the plan for the new triennium and for the new FFO. And in that context, I'm happy to announce, to launch the first 2 projects on these lines. First of all, a crowdfunding. In November, the board will be running a crowdfund tailored to support 3 specific projects. Final details TBC, but provisionally we're looking at the interfaith work, the Optimistic Alliance. We're looking at something themed around heritage, and we're looking at the Commission for Anti-Semitism, if we can line up the logistics and the details of all these in time. We're looking to raise at least £100,000, ideally £120,000, which we're looking to have matched with major donors in order to really build this out on a scale. That's an ambitious target, but I'm confident it's one we can achieve. I think many deputies will be familiar with these type of appeals where you have a target, it's disaggregated up into much smaller targets, each and raised by teams who raise £1,000, £2,000, £5,000 between them. We're looking to deputies to step up and to be part of that either as individuals or as communities in their shawls. Spread out over the 275 or 300 deputies, this seems very, very achievable, and we hope that as many people as possible will take part in it. We're going to email around in the next couple of weeks and be in touch with deputies to take this forward. I really hope that as many as possible will be able to support it. And like I said, it is so important, so key to not just keep delivering the things we are currently doing, but to build on the new priorities we have in this challenging time. Second of all, and relatedly, we've talked for a while about the board legacies programme, that the board in the last couple of years has benefited enormously from two specific legacies left very generously, one by a former deputy, one by just a member of the community who was a great supporter of our work. We're looking to continue that. Michael Uyghur, our chief executive, has some experience in this area, is going to be driving it. He'll be reaching out to all deputies over about the age of 50 to talk about potentially including the board in their wills and leaving a legacy of some kind so we can continue our work. Hopefully it's money we won't see for a very long time, but my successor in 2093 will be very grateful to have it. If there's anyone else, I should say, who has experience in this area and is interested in helping Michael with it, please speak to me, speak to Michael. With a couple of people, it'll be much easier than just with one, and we will look to be rolling that out as well over the next few weeks. I'm optimistic that we'll hit our budget for this year, that we'll make good progress on the budget for next year, but this is about building us not just for 1 or 2 years, but sustainably for 3, 5, 10, and for boards and for deputies and treasurers yet to come. So thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Any pressing questions to Ben? No. Then I'd like to invite Laura Marks to talk to us about Mitzvah Day. Oh, upstairs. Yeah.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, it would be really wonderful if we could have roving microphones upstairs, because I think the people upstairs are a bit excluded. So maybe for next time that would be wonderful. Thank you. So I'm actually not the deputy for Mitzvah Day. Jeremy is, but Jeremy is standing for election, so he's not allowed to speak. But I am closely connected to Mitzvah Day, so I feel very happy to speak on its behalf. And I just wanted to say that it's Mitzvah Day this year is on the 24th of November. It's actually a week later than it's traditionally been, which means that we won't be on Ajax. We won't be on the same day as Ajax, and we'll see how that goes. We'll see whether that supports Ajax. But it will be on the same day as the plenary in Manchester. So we're very excited to be seeing how we can all work together. And just to remind anybody who still doesn't know, after nearly 20 years, Mitzvah Day is the day when the Jewish community reaches out with our partners and our friends from other communities to contribute back to society. We say that we lead Jewish-led social action. So we run projects to support local charities that need us, and it's a day when we can, as Jews, show ourselves at our best. And it's a day that we can go out and we can be proudly out there in our green t-shirts saying, look, we're Jewish, look, we're contributing, please come and join us, and please let's do it together. So just very briefly, I want to urge everybody, encourage everybody, if you're going to be in Manchester, then maybe, Phil, we can do a project, as we've always done in the past, at the plenary, something, maybe a collection or something, so everybody can feel involved. If you're not in Manchester, maybe you would like to run a project in your own communities, turn around the people behind me, and set that up before you go. Something, it might be contributing to a food bank, it might be cleaning a park, it might be going to an old people's home. And the theme for Mitzvah Day 2024 is Stronger Together. And there's no it's not a coincidence that we're all in the same place. So with the Optimistic Alliance that Phil's been talking about, with Mitzvah Day, with so many things, our job this year is to reach out and to build those relationships that are very often at the moment in a state of, well, tatters would be the worst point of view, but certainly could do with a lot of building. So it's our opportunity as Jews, as people who care about our environment and our charities and our local communities, it's our opportunity to reach out. And I've been asked to mention one little project that is a board project that has been done with the with Mitzvah Day, which is called Second Chance, which is the donating reconditioned computers, where you donate an unreconditioned computer and it gets reconditioned. But that's one way that you can contribute, but there is a multitude of ways. And either we would urge you and encourage you to do something yourselves in your communities, encourage something to happen, set it up before you go, or find someone in your communities who is a social action activist maybe, and let's show British society that we as Jews contribute, we are present, we are positive, we want to make friends, and we are really useful members of society. So this is our opportunity, and I urge you all to please take part.
Thank you very much, Laura, for explaining that to everyone. I think that people are familiar with Mitzvah Day, but it's always good to hear again what it's all about and how people can get involved. So thank you very much. President Phil, would you like to make any concluding remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations on a brilliant meeting. I think you've done a fantastic job in the chair. And to Laura and to Jeremy, I can say absolutely we will do a Mitzvah Day project at the board plenary in Manchester, which I hope people will come to. It will be brilliant. We'll work with Manchester Deputies particularly on the ideal project for that, but it's absolutely right. We have done it at board meetings in the past. We will do it this time. I'd just like to use this slot to just say a bit about where we're going in the future. Obviously, these meetings often look backwards a bit and talk about what's happened, but I just want to kind of project forwards and just kind of whet your appetite for what's on the agenda until we next meet in November in Manchester. First of all, obviously, we know we'll have over the coming 24 hours the election results. The divisions will be populated. Those who are not successful this time will have every opportunity to be involved both as observers, but also might I say, as in the various ways that we're looking to empower all deputies. So good luck to all those standing. I think this is going to be a really exciting triennium, and we wait to see those results. Second of all, in the coming weeks, of course, we have the party conferences. The Liberal Democrat conference is on at the moment. Our Director of Public Affairs has just headed off to Brighton to go to that, and a few of us will be at both at Liverpool in the next week and Birmingham afterwards for the Conservative conference. And we're going to be over the next few months on a lot of visits. I will take these opportunities to visit the communities in Liverpool, in Birmingham. I'm going to Leeds, I think, before we next meet. And of course, the next meeting is in Manchester, really strengthening our connections with regional communities. One thing that's really important, very much on our minds, of course, the commemorations for the 7th of October. You'll know the board is part of a coalition of organisations organising programmes for the 5th to 7th of October. There will be national commemoration here in London, but the commemorations I know in Manchester, Leeds, Scotland, and all over the country. And please do let us know about the things that you're organising so that we can publicise those as well. A really important moment for us to stand together. Hopefully by then the hostages will be out, but in the meantime we will be campaigning with every fibre of our bodies to bring them home now. Finally, and just to say, obviously in the next few weeks we have the Jewish festivals. Tomorrow, I hope, and the next couple of days, we'll be launching our Employer's Guide to Judaism. As Andrew said, any members of your community who are struggling to get time off for religious observance, please do get in touch with us. Victoria leads that work. It's really important. The board stands as a trade union to support different members of the Jewish community in their workplace, and we will have a brand new resource or renewed resource for you to share with employers and with your constituents. Please do share it. So I think that leaves me just to say, Shana Tova Matuka, thank you very much. Really upbeat about the triennium. Let's get to work. Thank you. And we finished on time and under budget.